You're listening to the Personal Mastery Podcast with Ari Baga, interviewing CEOs and executives who are performing at the highest level in their industry, those who are living and working purposefully towards a vision in alignment with their values, and in a state of constant learning about the self. Welcome to another episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast, and in this episode we have my good friend Emmett Shine. Emmett is the founder of Jinlane, a marketing agency that works with some of the largest brands in the world. He helped launch brands like Hims, SmileDirectClub, Quip, and many other brands. And he now turned Jinlane from a marketing agency into sort of like a housing for direct-to-consumer brands, and he's been able to launch like 4 brands already. So what we're going to dive into in this episode is how he was able to launch these brands, and we get specifically into tactics for actually launching a brand. So we talk about things like, okay, what should you focus on when launching a brand? Should it be performance marketing? Should it be brand marketing? How can performance marketing and brand marketing work together? When should you be doing paid marketing? So there's a lot that we dive into here on how to successfully launch a brand. So without further ado, here's Emmett. Emmett, welcome to the show.
What's going on, Ari? Thank you so much for having me.
Not much, just still trying to survive in quarantine.
Yeah, same here. I was saying earlier, I guess it's a tropical depression. Isaiah just came through and just whipped it up in Brooklyn pretty bad. Branches fell on my car, but it's all right. But
no way.
At least it's something interesting to look at from the window.
Yeah, that's crazy. There is lots of rain on the East Coast right now.
Yeah, it was like 60-mile-per-hour winds at one point. It was a lot, but I'm gonna try to go surfing in the morning tomorrow, so I'm excited about that.
Nice. So you were born in Long Island, correct?
Yeah, I was born in a town called West Islip in the middle of Suffolk on Long Island. Then I moved to Southampton and Sag Harbor zone when I was probably like 4 or 5, and then grew up out there through high school, everything. And then took a year off, stayed out there, was landscaping after high school, decided I should try to get out of there, after a while. And then saved up some money from landscaping and went to New Zealand. I'd never left the country, looked at a globe. That's the furthest place, went there for, I think 100 days is what I could do on the visa or something like that. And then I went to Puerto Rico for like a month and a half, and I bought a camera for when I was going and learned how to shoot photographs a bit more. Like I took some photo in high school, but got into it and applied to some colleges, got into NYU for photography for Tisch, and went there and bought a computer for going to college, learned how to use computers, learned graphic design, web design, and just started kind of doing my thing, and started a t-shirt skateboarding company with my childhood friends where I was like the design nerd guy of it. Dropped out of college my senior year just to kind of work full time. And then, started Jinlane like 2 years after that.
Yeah, you, fellow dropout right here. I also dropped out. I actually dropped out twice. And I said it in my last episode, but it's always great to see that, like, at least most entrepreneurs that I know are like dropouts, which is like pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they say like necessity is the mother of invention or whatever, it's like, I think a lot of entrepreneurial people, you gotta be entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
So I was always just trying to do whatever I could do to, even just paying rent was like a luxury. It was like, trying to buy stuff for school. And I just got so tired of it. That's why I was like, other people at school, I felt like they were able to just focus on like their studies and stuff. And I was just stressing all the time. Like, I'm making so much more money than everyone else that I'm going to school with. And I'm still broker than every single person I'm going to school with. Like, this sucks, and I like learning, but I just didn't, a problem I had like with the college experience was like, I didn't really feel like I could, and you know, NYU is really expensive, but I got a lot of financial aid. I had to pay a ton. And, you know, maybe in hindsight, I would have went to like a trade school or something like that. Or I wanted to be in New York City, you know, cause I just knew that that's where I wanted to kind of go and be. But I just felt the college experience was a really big letdown in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways for, you know, like a lot of people I was close with when I was at college were people that were either like, you know, they were like first generation Americans, and like they were on a different wavelength than a lot of the other kids that were just going into like 13th grade that were just trying to have the best time possible. It was really like a big deal that they were in college and they were trying to take it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, pretty seriously. And everyone in my family has dropped out of college, my mom, my dad, me, my
Wow.
sister. So, you know, but we all kind of work for ourselves at the same time. So, um, you know,
Yeah,
everything is kind of a blessing in disguise.
man, that's the first time I've heard that, like full family of dropouts. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So what was like the best memory from New Zealand though? Like,
It was one of the first times that I was able to, oh, and I guess just if anyone listening, so, and I helped found Pattern, which is a family of brands.
yeah.
And we got Equal Parts, Open Spaces. I'll talk on that in a little bit, but I always forget to say, you know, what I'm doing. New Zealand was really dope because I think, you know, like growing up and in high school and stuff, I never even had a car. I didn't live that far. I lived in the village. I didn't live
Yeah.
that far from like school. So I just walked to school and my friends would pick me up and I skateboarded and rode a bike. And, you know, I didn't really think too much about like, I don't know, like doing all like growing up, trying to be cool, like high school dude
Yeah.
stuff. I was just in my head about things. And so when I went to New Zealand, it was kind of like I was really out there on my own. You know, like I had saved up, you know, a few $1,000, which I just turned 18, which is like a lot of money. I bought, you know, camera, some film, and I hitchhiked, you know, or I take a train, or, you know, like I just went all over. I was really into boogie boarding. I like surfing more now. I'm taller, but I was really into boogie
Yeah.
boarding. So New Zealand has incredible surf. I was skateboarding and surfing and going all over. And you know, it's where they film Lord of the Rings. It's a very beautiful, beautiful island. I stayed with a Maori family, which is like the native population for New Zealand when I was in the North Island in Auckland. And you know, they just put me on to, you know, so much cool culture. I was, you know, hanging out at all these all black, you know, the rugby players' houses. And you know, they were
Yeah.
showing me pictures when they were in high school. You know, this one guy dated Lucy Lawless, who was like you know, Xena warrior princess, right? So like, you know, like it was cool just to see like their whole vibe. And he was married to a Fijian woman.
Wow.
So it was like a lot of Pacific Islander kind of vibes. And went down to the South Island. I hitchhiked from Christchurch to Queenstown, which is like this town that's so far south where it's like, I think they probably invented like bungee jumping there. You know, they're like crazy, like, you know, in terms of that type of stuff. But I think it was good just for me to kind of find my, like, who I was. I think I
Mhm.
didn't really know, you know, I wasn't, you know, like the most confident person in high school about who I was going to become. I wasn't like, you know, some loser in a typical 80s movie where people are shoving me in lockers or something like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know who I was. And I was smart. I got good grades, but even kids that didn't even care about school, you know, they went to college. I didn't even go to college. I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, it sounds dumb.
Yeah.
So I just was in a place where I didn't really know, you know, what I wanted to do with my life. Not in
Yeah.
like a bad way. I just had no clue.
Hmm. And you started Gin Lane in 2008 in the middle of the recession. Like, how did that, like the skateboard store, and like, how did that all lead up to like starting this company?
Yeah, so I was at NYU and I was, you know, trying to make money, doing whatever I could do to stay in school. And so I was, you know, photographing using the dark room, charging people to do photo shoots, you know, in the dark room. We had this thing called the digital dark room at NYU, which was like the coolest thing. And it was like 20 computers souped out, like with like, you know, scanners and printers and all Adobe software and just so powerful. And I would just sit in there and like just learn all these programs and stuff, because instead of paying for film and to get it developed, I could like shoot a digital camera, upload these photographs, I could edit them, and then if I learned basic web stuff, I could put them online. And if I was shooting a product, and I could put online, that I could sell it. So I could do this whole loop for basically free. And so, after a few years of me doing freelance work and trying to run this company Lola with my friends, and I had worked at Rockaware for a few years. I worked at Vitamin Water for a few years. Like I was just bouncing around. I kind of was like, maybe people weren't paying me on time, so if I said I work for an agency, then people maybe will take me more seriously. And Gin Lane is this really rich road in Southampton where I'm from. So I was kind of like, okay, that sounds, rich. So I'll just say that's the name. No one knew what it was, but in my head, I was like, Gin Lane Media, and people, paid. And then I had to incorporate, set up a bank account to actually cash the check. I didn't thought that through. And this was actually like 2007. And then 2008, when we kind of kicked it up, then the whole market, collapsed. And, so we just had started to do really well. We're doing a few $100,000 in business. It was me, a few other people. I had like some kids in colleges that were doing design stuff. And, we started hiring a few more people, and we got a little bit of a bigger office space. And then all the clients we were working with were like, yo, we can't pay you any more money. We got to pull all our budgets in-house. And we were actually doing a lot of outdoor marketing and offline marketing. We were just doing, my background was in digital, building websites, but we were getting paid by like Seamless, like the food ordering company, to hand out flyers, like just do promotion stuff. And so they pulled all their budgets in, and then we said to them like, yo, we also know how to build websites and do digital stuff. And they're like, look, our budget just went down by like a quarter. If you can take, a few $1,000 or whatever to do something here, we'll give it to you. And we're like, okay, bet, done. So, we just went and started like building little Facebook editions and building little like pop-up websites, and started going to some of the fashion companies that we knew and said, what if we can build these websites for you? Cause you're pulling your budgets in that can be creative, and cost pennies on the dollar. And so, we were running out of money, everything, but like we just tried to get really, really nimble. And so I just thought it was very fitting starting Pattern, last year, and then going right into a global pandemic. It's like, here we go all over again. First year in for both businesses.
Yeah. So when right now for like Gin Lane, I know you guys have been at it for quite some time now. Can you talk about some of the brands that you guys are working with? I know you have some really big brands.
Yeah, so last year we officially transitioned Gin Lane into Pattern. And so we went from being an agency to being an operating business for our own brands. But prior to that, we were fortunate enough to work with a lot of really cool businesses. Some on like the bigger side, we got to work with, Nike and Whole Foods and GE and Adidas and Stella McCartney and, I don't know, cool brands. And then more on like the startup side, we got to work with, Warby Parker and Bonobos and Everlane. And, then getting closer to where we were really providing value is we did a lot of building the apps and the online ordering and the design digital work for Sweetgreen. And then getting even closer, we got to launch Harry's, launch Hims, launch, or kind of launch like SmileDirectClub, Recess, Haus. So we were able to work with a pretty big group of pretty awesome, at first like businesses, and then, getting closer to the startups of learning and working with them early days, and then actually getting to alongside the entrepreneurs, help build the businesses and launch them. So that in some ways was one of the catalysts for us doing Pattern. Starting that last year was like, we've been so close to building so many brands. We think we have a unique point of view on how we could build brands, so Pattern's mission, you can see the background and stuff, a painting my mom did that then our designers, digitized, is trying to get people to, and again, this was like our idea, like 2017, 2018, was to spend more time at home and to enjoy their time at home, versus in our 20s, we were spending so much time focused on Instagram, going out to restaurants, going out to concerts, on travel, all the stuff where you're just kind of like spending money and then you're just collapsing and then you go back to work. or work is dominating your kind of day, we were saying, okay, what if we got coupled up, getting a pet, having a kid, getting married, like how do we, where our bodies and our interests are changing, how do we make it cool to spend more time at home, which isn't kind of like American youth culture, like it's, the 1950s is like home life, but that's kind of like whack. It's not that cool as much as like sneakers or pop music or a car, and like America is cool.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of our focus, as well as like, trying to do it as a family of brands. So, as we were an agency focusing on multiple brands, and startups, were working closely with them, could we build our own startups and work closely with them, but it's focused on one area, which is home life,
Okay.
and then get some of the benefits because they're under one roof. So it's not like one brand has to try to be $1 billion business. They each
Mhm.
can kind of just do their thing more, predictably and calmly.
Mhm. So now with Pattern, have you completely shut down the agency side and then now just working with your own
Yep.
brand? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So I just kind of like, I was talking to someone about it, and I was saying that I grew up really liking like, sports and rap music and stuff. And like, whether it was Michael Jordan or Jay-Z, they're always kind of like, I'm retiring, like
Yeah.
they just never wanted to get like, really old in, a young man's game. And I think I've kind of been influenced by that to some extent, where I feel like we had a really good run, and I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to like go out, quote unquote, on top, or, the best for, what we could do. Like a guy once told me, I was thinking about opening up an office in LA for Gin Lane, probably like 2009, like so early. And he was like, you need to own your backyard first. And basically it meant like, try to become the best in New York before you're going out and spreading yourself too thin. So I don't know if we were the best in New York, that, I'm not whatever, but I'm just saying, like, I
Yeah.
felt like we were good at what we did. And so that was a nice time to be like, okay, on to the next challenge. And let's just, go back to being like, like my first day in the job style, like being an intern, and just, I want to go back to learning, operating, businesses, which is very different than, branding and marketing them.
Mhm. Now, you guys have launched like dozens of brands, right? And every time you talk about a founder who's ready to launch, they're super stressed out because there's so much that goes into like launching a brand. Is there like a secret sauce to like launching that's like less stressful, or what like how do you guys like successfully launch brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting because it's kind of like history judges all or something like that. So it's kind of like success is probably played out over a longer amount of time than we think sometimes, because a lot of what could be perceived as like successful would be, oh, a lot of people, heard about this or had great traction or it came out of the gate strong.
Mhm.
But I think as I've learned more through experience and, age, you really look, at these businesses over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and which are the ones that kind of find their versions of success, because there's so many different versions of how one could define success. And I think then it's kind of like a way to depressurize what your launch is or what it could mean is thinking, more where you kind of want to go, and then, working backwards and having more of an iterative kind of testing approach. So I think now something that I really value, it's still like having a little bit of a splash and getting people, I like, the term social currency. It's like giving people something to kind of talk about, but how
Mhm.
can you do it as like lean as possible so that you're not over investing and putting all your eggs in one basket? And maybe it's right, but maybe it's also wrong, or maybe it's somewhere in between. And I think that's something that I've learned personally, in the past years of, launching Pattern, launching Equal Parts, launching Open Spaces. There's been elements of each of those that we've got really right. And there were some elements that we, miscalculated in terms of what we thought would kind of happen. So the thing I've taken from it is be as lean and iterative as possible, so that you're kind of like, you don't need that big moment. You want to just kind of test, and you want to build like, concentric circles of like buzz. And one of the best things I think you can do is really try to get strong word of mouth. It's one of the most valuable and important ways to like grow a business, because you don't have to really like pay for it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
people are doing the work for you for free, but they're only going to do it if there's something that is like special that they want to, shout from the mountaintops and tell their friends, so usually it's having a great product, it's great customer experience, it's a great value prop, it's something quirky and different, that they want to talk about. And I think that stuff kind of like the way you get to those is kind of testing. So you test with
Mm-hmm.
like a small group of friends, that you really trust, and they're going to be honest with you. They're going to be like, whatever, your name's Sarah or something. They're like, hey, Sarah, like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. But to be honest, like, I didn't really understand like the webpage, what it was trying to say, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Well, but then, you go and you think about it, and then you release it to like, some peers you trust. And then you release it to a small group of people that are interested in this area. And so I think more that staggered approach versus just announcing, what up world, I'm here. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's crickets, or people say, oh, that's cool, I'm going to go do my thing now. It's building up a really loyal kind of base, slow and steady with those concentric circles, which I think is a smart approach.
Mm-hmm. Now, we see a lot of direct-to-consumer brands are launching go directly with paid acquisition, whether through Facebook or Instagram. And over the past few years, we've heard like many people talking about building an audience before launching a product. Is that something that you've done or recommend versus like going strictly into paid?
I would say it's something that I really recommend. I wouldn't say it's something that we one-to-one like strategically did for Pattern. I think we had a little bit of an audience because we were coming from Jin Lane, and we had built up like I don't know, a nice rapport within the direct to consumer and the design world. So Jin Lane had a little following that we were able to parlay into Pattern, and then parlay that into equal parts, and then take Jin Lane, Pattern, and Open Spaces and parlay that into Open Spaces launch. We have
Mm-hmm.
some cool stuff coming out this fall where we've been able to like grow our audiences collectively, because it's three audience groups. It's Open Spaces, equal parts, and
Mm-hmm.
Pattern. So in some ways we've kind of cobbled together this like growing audience approach. I think there would be an alternate reality where we're, like, let's say that we were going to, launch equal parts or Open Spaces, where we could have built, an audience a year in advance, half a year in advance for those topics, and really seeded within the community, that we were going to do that. I think that's a really smart approach. I think paid, we've been pretty active in terms of paid marketing. We have a really good team that we brought on. I'm not the most experienced. I'm more of a brand marketer versus a growth marketer. They're very different.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned a lot over the past, year, and they're really great at like testing. So I think that's important to know, is that like, we're not going and saying, okay, let's just spend $10,000 on this ad, we think it's cool. There's a very methodical way, which again comes back to being as lean as possible and testing within the algorithmic system. Let's say if it's Facebook, which is Facebook and Instagram, what is resonating and what is looking really well. And then the whole thing for paid is, what does it cost to acquire a customer? And
Mm-hmm.
then also, what does it cost for you to, make and market a product? And I think a big push in the direct consumer CPG space right now is trying to be profitable upon first purchase, which again is like this retro futuristic notion of just going back to like business best practices. I think the
Yeah.
consumer space got kind of pulled by like, VC and startup culture, which is really based on like, software. So a lot of like the modern incarnations of like venture capital, they bet, on 10 startups, and they really hope that one or two of them hit really big, which is,
Yeah.
then the other eight, if they don't kind of hit, okay, it's kind of
Yeah.
gambling. It's like strategic gambling. But to hit really big, that's kind of the world of like traditionally software, because software has such high margins, because it's so replicatable. When you're dealing with like physical goods, they don't really have the margins like that unless it's certain categories that are usually very competitive and have, these hard advantages in them, like perfume, or luxury goods. You can't just go as much spin up, a 100-year-old atelier, or break into the perfume mafia or something like that, So there has been the disruptor brands like Warby Parker, famously, or Everlane, like cutting out the middleman, and then they sell online so they can make good margins, but customers can pay a better price. That's all
Mhm.
true. But then you have a bunch of people that were rushing to each category, which is what happened for like classically Casper and mattresses. They went in and they bundle it up in a box so it gets delivered at home, so you don't need to go to a Sleepy's. You can save a bunch of money. It's a cool brand. It's an awesome experience to buy it online. Well, next thing you know, there's 100 other businesses doing the exact same thing. So
Mhm.
their cost of acquiring a customer went from something pretty good compared to like what it cost them to, like the cost was going up and up and up and up, and it became not as advantageous of a business. So I think going into paid is really fine if your numbers make sense and
Mhm.
you know how to kind of test, because
Mhm.
if you're not as versed or don't have someone to help you for testing, you can sink a lot of money into it and not really know why something's working or not.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of like what I also think about when I talk to brands. It's like it's about lifetime value, right? So if you know that your customer is gonna spend, I don't know, like $200-300, then is it okay to spend around like $70 to like $100 to acquire that customer? So if you figure out like what the lifetime value of your customer is, or even like your average order value, if you're starting and you don't have any data, what is someone spending? What is your return purchase rate? So basically, how many of those customers are going to come back and make a second purchase so that you can stay profitable? So it's just like really about going deep into numbers before getting into paid, because we've seen like many brands come out that they're spending so much on paid and can't get out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, with COVID and the markets kind of tightening up for investment in consumer and CPG, right? Like what people are asking for a lot more now is a path to profitability, or being, at least profitable upon first purchase. And so with so many of these businesses being so young, I think there's a little bit of like devaluing right now customer lifetime value as a metric to bet against, because it's really hard to prove or figure out what that could be. I think the average order value, to your point, I think that's something that people are really looking at. And then, getting into your, I'm a creative guy, but like,
Yeah.
getting into your unit economics and your gross margins, there's a lot more of like a diligence and emphasis on like getting the fundamentals of your business right, which is why I think, again, building up an audience, iterating at launch. These are more like cost-effective ways that you can get people to purchase, and then word of mouth talk about your products. I'm not saying, in Pattern we've done some of that. We've also done some paid, like we're experimenting and learning. But if I'm talking to someone who is, part of an early stage business or trying to start a business, I do think
Mhm.
trying to build up an audience, I do think trying to get word of mouth, I do think trying to, get your costs, fundamental. And then I do think it's having some people that have legitimate experience, if you want to go into paid marketing, that can
Mhm.
kind of guide you through, the weirdness, which is like, Facebook's ecosystem, Google's ecosystem, some of the other, ancillary, advertising networks or affiliate or pre-roll. Like they're very weird and they're very quirky, and there's a very specific ways in which you need to read the data. It's all ratio based, and if you get something that works and you know what you're doing, then you can really push that thing. But it's very
Mhm.
hard to kind of do that, and if you get it, it doesn't. It tends to kind of go like this. So it has a
Mhm.
half life. So you have to constantly be rethinking about that strategy.
Yeah. And when it comes to launching a brand and you being a brand marketer, today there's this fight between brand marketers and performance marketers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, do you go for like getting as many people as possible to know about the product, or do you go for, okay, can we get like as many people as possible to come to the website and purchase right away?
I think they work hand in hand in different ways. So I think brand marketing in two parts. Like one, I think building a compelling brand, it can last a lifetime. If
Yeah.
you're not really building a brand that resonates, it makes the growth marketer's job that much harder, you know? And so growth marketing in many ways, I think, is like the livelihood for kind of like scaling and sustaining the types of businesses we're talking about. But you never, again, want to put all your eggs in one basket, and it makes it really hard for them and for the business if that's the only way that you're bringing people into the business. And that's where brand marketing comes in as a very valuable supplement, complement for, you know, organically stoking and creating a community, doing cool collaborations, doing cool campaigns, you know, doing interesting you know, content and marketing that people, you know, organically are going to gravitate towards, because that essentially is like a way more cost-effective way to be bringing people into the business. And then if you have a good product and good customer experience, you know, then you're creating kind of a sustainable ecosystem of like good product, good word of mouth, good brand marketing, good paid marketing. That said, it's way easier said than done. Like, I'm not going to sit
Right.
here and say for Pattern, we have all the ratios figured out. We're like everyone else in
Yeah.
2020, you know, dealing with so many shifting, you know, issues, shifting algorithms, supply chain, inventory. It's hard. It's not, it isn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like brand marketing is something that like I have experience with many times, right? And I like the fact that you mentioned like collaboration with like celebrities and different things like that, because I would look at, let's say, like someone that in like sports, for example, that I like, they would like use like a product, and that product would just like stick in my mind. Like, let's say if I'm looking for like deodorant, for example, and I see my favorite like soccer player wearing one, next time that I think about buying one, that's like the brand that they're wearing that comes to mind. So it's not necessarily like, okay, I'm going to buy it right now, but it's in my mind. And eventually when I do need that product, then your brand is the first that comes to mind.
Yeah. And I think a thing also is like, there's different types of marketing for different stages, right? So like, awareness marketing is really effective, you know, if you've got like a very powerful conversion funnel, or if you have like a wider distribution. But awareness marketing isn't necessarily as effective if you don't have some of those channels as tightly designed, you know. So it's different things to use at different times, because you can get a lot of awareness, but if people can't purchase your product, or it's, you know, as not of an easy process to purchase through your own properties, you're kind of like wasting dollars a little bit. And so I think that's another thing that like is important to know what stage, you know, you're at and what the goals are per those different marketing initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Now you've invested in a lot of these direct-to-consumer brands that we're talking about. Is there one that you think it's like your favorite, or a couple brands that you like at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, Pattern, Open Spaces, Equal Parts. I'm pumped on those. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, let me think. Um, I'll just say some brands I think are cool. I think Baboon to the Moon is fun. They make bags, but they're just creative with it. I think the guy Gabe Whaley, who's done Mischief, you know, is a very fun approach, and his costs for acquisition are very low because it's like
Mhm.
viral initiatives and stunts. I think trying to think. Entire World has a really cool aesthetic and a beautiful website. Um, I like Ethel's Club that Naj Austin is doing and has been doing in her company. I think it's called Do Something, is like the parent company for that.
Mhm.
Um, uh, my partner's wife, Jordan Taylor, just started Medley, which is a pretty cool like online group for getting people to kind of come together and talk through stuff. So it's cool to see some of these aesthetics and stuff being applied in non-traditional ways. Um, I think Parade is cool. They've got like a nice like youthful vibe.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. There's a lot of really cool. I did a talk last night with the founders of Gold, Gold, and Maud, Maude. Ava from Maud and Trinity from Gold. They're both pretty cool. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
there's like these like small lifestyle kind of brands where the founders are really passionate. I like Girls Night In. Um, think Alicia is the founder. You know, I don't know. I kind of like Tracksmith, Rafa. Like I like these niche little brands that are very like passionate
Yeah.
about what they're doing. I try to find a lot of inspiration from them because their user groups and fan bases as a community are very evangelized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Baboon is definitely one of the ones that I really like. The first time I checked out their website, I was just like so amazed about
Yeah.
how amazing everything is, and so yeah, I'll definitely check some of those other ones out. So recently, I was talking to, I think, our marketing director, and he was basically telling me about how some of the brands that he was taking a look at, or just like within like the direct to consumer space, a lot of them were basically like they would like launch their website and then they would get into like paid marketing, spend a lot of money on paid, but couldn't figure out like some of the different ways that you can get someone to come back for like a second purchase. And we were basically talking about, is the product the most important factor when it comes to getting someone to come back to site? Is there anything that you can say to convince someone to come back? So I wanted to ask you, like, from your experience with the current brands that you're running, is it the products that get someone to come back to make the second purchase, or what is it that, is it brand that convinces someone to come back? Like, what is it that gets someone to come back to make that second purchase?
One other brand I wanted to add quickly is Haus, and I think Helena
Yeah.
Hambrick, the founder, with her husband Woody. I always find inspiration in her personal marketing about the brand. I think people really buy into her kind of like iconoclastic, rebellious, taking
Yeah.
on this big industry, and she's in there fighting, to change this and allow people to have like a good time in different terms. So I think she's another really inspiring one.
Yeah.
For your question, so I guess I'll just shout out on our team. I don't know if they'll hear this or whatever, but there's Dan Peskin, who heads up growth, Mike Shoyak, who heads up retention, Meg Sheehan, who heads up acquisition. And there I've learned a lot from them, again, as like being more from a brand and brand marketing background. And
Yep.
so Mike, heads up retention marketing. So I think two parts to it. One, having a good product helps a lot.
Mm.
I think that's like like a very important base, to understand, is that like if the product's really good, you'll be surprised. Also, it's a lot of stuff, which is, it was hard for us. It's like your first runs. It's kind of like, hardcore Apple heads. They know if they're buying the Gen 1, there's going to be stuff with it that like Gen 2 will be better. So when
Yeah.
you're a startup and you're buying these brands hot off the press the first time around, this thing may not fit just perfect, or this is kind of great, but this thing in transportation is not one-to-one. So it takes time. If you're buying into an early stage startup, you are kind of really like investing in them and giving them a shot to figure it out. But I do think the better you can have your products be, the more it will delight people. And then the customer experience, I think, is also really key, to surround that experience. If anything goes wrong, or if it's delayed, or someone is unhappy for whatever reason that may be, I think that's a great place to kind of start. Then on the retention marketing side, I've been really impressed by like how Mike and the team are so thoughtful about like email marketing, and they have different segmentation. They know different types of customers that are in our email database, and what some of them, where they came from, and what they're also kind of looking for. Okay, this is a customer. This is someone that came from a sweepstakes. This is someone that signed up on the website. This is someone that, was part of our Texas Chef program that then signed up. This person's bought 2 times, and so you can then start figuring out what type of content to serve them, and that really becomes kind of the game. But the game is providing value. If you're providing value that someone, sees, they go, oh, okay, cool. Like, that does make sense. Those accessories, that's a good deal on it. Or actually, I probably could use a knife. Or, I had bought, the underbed storage, and you know what, actually these new colors for the entryway rack, like I was interested in them before, but now I'm going to purchase it. So I think the customer data and knowing what people are looking for that becomes really important. So another thing is that like, you don't necessarily own your customers' information if it's on a social platform. You own your customers' information if it's email or SMS. So, you know, there are businesses which are valuable because they have, you know, 100, 200, 500, 1 million, you know, email subscribers or active, you know, in terms of their open rate. That's pretty valuable than if you have a good product, good customer experience, and a good email marketing retention team, because they'll know then what to drip out and seed out in terms of what content and what products and what capacity and what sales and what offers and what giveaways that your audience is really looking for, and then you're marketing directly to them. So it's like that, there's no acquisition cost in that sense because you own that audience.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely talk about here. Own marketing. Some of the most profitable brands of today leverage own marketing to get to that point where, whether they started a blog before actually launching the brand, or they spent some time building that audience through email or text, and then launch a product that solves a problem.
Yeah, you got it. 100%. It's hard to
Exactly.
do, and it requires a lot of foresight, because you got to be like, I want to launch this product, and now I'm going to, like, in a year, you know, or
Yeah.
like, now I'm going to build up, you know, I'm going to build up an audience on Twitter or Instagram or on Substack. And then I'm going to pull them in, you know, to email for my own stuff, you know, and then I'm going to start seeding to them what I'm doing, what I'm working on, get them pumped. And then, you know, to get them then to convert, if you can get that, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of testing, but that is extremely valuable.
Yeah. Now going back like to some of the brands that you mentioned, and I noticed that a lot of them have really passionate founders, like you mentioned, right? Like, how important is like the founder story in like launching a brand? Is that something that you can leverage in marketing, and how does it change as you grow your business?
You know, I don't think it's that important. I think I just am attracted to it. I think different customers are attracted to different things. I think if you have like I think it's important to some extent. Let me rephrase it. Like, it's
Yeah.
important, but I don't think
Yeah.
it's like everyone has to, like, you know, Suge Knight, if you don't be
Yeah.
all up in your video, you know, like, you know, like you don't have to be this gregarious personality. You know, you can be, I don't know, just a quiet person or a thoughtful person, or the limelight or whatever isn't your cup of tea. But I
Yeah.
do think your values that you have are important, because I do think company culture is being more looked at now, you know, and people want to know, okay, I'm giving all my money to this software service, or,
Mhm.
you know, I'm now buying this type of coffee, or I'm wearing these type of clothing, or I'm getting my health insurance from this type of business, you know, like, what's the deal with what this company represents? It seems like they've
Yeah.
got cool designs, you know, like cool marketing, but like, are they really actually, like, you know, having fair practices? Do they have a diverse team? Are they, you know, being thoughtful in terms of how their products are made? Like, I think for younger audiences, they care a lot more about responsibility, diversity, about environmentalism, about sustainability. You don't
Yep.
have to be perfect on those. That's another thing, you know, but I think you should be, you should try to be making cultures for your business that are, and why not do this anyway, just one step more progressive than not.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's something that's we've seen a lot more recently with many brands launching, whether they claiming that they're fully sustainable or they're working towards being sustainable. And those are things that consumers like, right? Like sometimes I'll get an email from a brand that I like. They said, okay, now we're using even better materials that are better for the planet. And next time that I buy, I don't feel as bad, basically, when
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
purchasing a product.
It's like voting with your wallet, and you want to feel like the same feeling, you know, when something kind of bad happens in the world, and, you know, you donate, you know, on a, I don't know, an Instagram story, or you send some money to, you know, a charity or an organization. Like, you know, it's your hard-earned money, and you feel like you're not going to get a big award for it, but you feel like, you know, you contributed to a meaningful kind of cause. And I think
Mhm.
it's not, I try to be careful here. It's definitely different, but I think, like, giving your money to anything, it's your hard-earned money, right? So I
Yeah.
think if you're selling something, it's important to try to make people feel, and from a good place, not just from like a scammy place, that like their money is money well spent. It's
Yeah.
not only will they receive something, whether it's software, a service, or a physical good, they also feel like they're contributing to an organization or a business that they feel happy to give their hard-earned money to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now getting more into like some of the personal things here. I mean, you've been at it for a while now, and you seem like you've been able to find success in like the e-commerce space and now running your own brands. So is there like a specific routine or different things that you do throughout the day that keep you performing at this level?
Yeah, I saw that you had that as a question. I really like that, because pattern is like enjoy daily life, through everyday rituals and practices. And we have our 10-step kind of guide. It's like, like do something before you look at your phone, make your bed every morning, like find time, to try to, obviously it's a little bit different during sheltering in place, but like to go for a
Yeah.
walk or get fresh air, wind down before bed, like spend time either with yourself or with your partner, like get a good sleep. And these are things that like they're hard for us to do because we're so wired and we're so tapped into our screens and the attention economy. And we also, in America, we work really hard, and people that are successful feel like they have to work even harder. And then people
Yeah.
that are kind of, trying to make ends meet, they got to work hard because they got to work hard. So America is just this weird culture where like everyone is working really long hours, but we're also like on our screens the whole time. So we just don't get as much like time to, reflect or listen to our thoughts.
Mhm.
So I'm not like perfect. Like sometimes I wake up and I look at my phone, or sometimes I
Yeah.
wake up and it just, the day kind of starts. But like on my good days, like, I mean, I'm always walking my dog in the morning. I try to meditate as much as I can, just try to do 10 minutes in the morning. I like to
Mhm.
try to get to a place where, they say like, if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, then you need 20. So I think that's like a funny phrase. There's like little breathing exercises I like doing. Like, you breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds through the nose, and then breathe it out for 5 seconds, and then just kind of let it go out for like another 5 seconds. And if you're feeling stressed out or anxious, I find that helps me to just like pause and take a step back from it. um
Mhm.
I've been pretty like stressed and busy with work the past few months because of everything going on, but I think reading is a really great exercise that is like, it's like nutrition and working out for the brain, and it's not a screen.
Yep.
And I also think like, I know not everyone can do these, and I'm not saying I do these. I'm just saying kind of what my goals are.
Yeah.
And I don't like when starter people come on, they're like, I do this, I'm perfect. I'm like, I'm definitely not perfect. Like, oh man. But also sweating, I think, is really helpful. So like, I like surfing, skateboarding, playing basketball. I got, some courts right by my house here in Brooklyn, and I'll just go shoot hoops with headphones on and work up a sweat. I don't need more than 15, 20 minutes, but I'll just feel better because, like you're releasing stuff. So I think in short, it's just trying to find time,
Mhm.
to listen to yourself and, take care of yourself. We don't like give ourselves permission to do that. It's like, you only need 5, 10 minutes here and there. It really goes a long way. But instead we just kind of like fill all of our dead time by looking at our like phones, but that
Mhm.
doesn't actually like nourish us.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's something that I totally agree with everything that you said. And I try to do like all these things, like, meditate, make your bed, and go out in nature, just take a walk. And I figured out that like everything that you do, like in your personal life, reflects in your work life, right? So like if you're stressed out
Your
in your
first your
personal
first
life.
job is taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. Well, that said, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Now, where can people find you?
Yeah. So my name's Emmett Shine. On Instagram, I'm at Emmett. On Twitter, I'm at Emmett Shine. And then Pattern Brands is just at Pattern Brands,
Hmm.
patternbrands.com. And then the two brands right now we have are Open Spaces, which is getopenspaces.com. And the handles for that on both platforms are Get Open Spaces, and Equal Parts is we got the URL actually equalparts.com, but it's
Wow.
get equal parts on platforms. And so, hit me up, shoot me a message, check out the brands, let me know what you think. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on here. I love what you're doing, and you ask very thoughtful questions, and hopefully for the people, that are listening or watch this, that there's some nuggets of value in here.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely link those brands in the description. Now, for the second part of this podcast, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, make sure to go to YouTube to watch these 2 questions. I'm sure you're going to have some really cool answers. So I have Emmett here, and in this section, I'm going to ask him 2 questions. So the first question is, how do you build a profitable business in 2020?
I think some of the stuff that we talked on earlier is really true. What's it called? You try to keep your costs kind of low, be nimble, get good word of mouth, try to make a good product, and test. I think that's like just lean and mean. That's just the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. And the second one here is, if you were to start over today, what business would you start?
So this is a little bit out of left field, but like I am fascinated right now with all the stuff going on with UFOs, which are now called UAPs. They rebranded it so it's less kooky. But the New York Times has been dropping all these articles, like one every year, that like the government is coming out, the Pentagon, the Navy saying, yup, these are actual videos. We can't identify this. It doesn't apply to anything that we know in terms of what physics can happen. These are UFOs. They're fucking crazy, and so then there's this company called To the Stars, which is insane because the founder is the lead singer from Blink 182, but he has gotten all the the Golden State Warriors, the A-Team, whatever, the Last Dance, Chicago Bulls, of all these guys from the Pentagon and the government that were like deep in the game. Sorry, the phone was just ringing. And they're now getting the government to come out and be like, yep, that's right. What's the next crazy thing? We've got crafts. And so the New York Times is releasing all these articles, and it's so insane how crazy the year 2020 is, that it's not like the most biggest news in humanity, it's nuts. And so I think if I had to do something else, I would just go work for them, just do branding and marketing, whatever. Cause I'm like, this is crazy. I could sell products, or I could help expand the mind of what is truly going on in the universe. And not that I know, and I'm not trying to be kooky conspiracy theory guy. I just think it's pretty interesting. What I learned from branding and marketing is you can take those skills and you can apply them in different industries. You can go into government, you can go into healthcare, you can go into fintech, this whole explosion out of consumer-centric branding, marketing, et cetera. I think out of New York, the past 10 years, it really is informing how we interface with businesses in every category.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And there's surely a lot going on this year. So I will definitely check that out when they launch that article. It's not out yet, right? Do you know when it's going to be out?
No, you just type UFO New York Times, and then you'll it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. I was reading a bunch on the authors and this company To the Stars. I just find it fascinating. And also I find it nice to take my mind off of the terrestrial stress and challenges of our everyday lives, is to think, are we alone? What else is out there? And it makes you feel a little insignificant, but in a kind of good way.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, man.
Really man, that was dope. That was great.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Emmett Shine. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, make sure to follow this podcast and leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like below, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And as always, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast.